All right. Thanks everybody again for joining. You may have heard the little sound telling us that this meeting is being recorded. So we do record these meetings. So if you have someone that wasn't able to be with us tonight, or you just want to go back and refresh on things you heard at the meeting, just know that we are recording this, and that recording will be available on NDOT's website in the next few days after the meeting. My name is Jeff Hammond. I'm a consultant working on behalf of NDOT. That's the Nashville Department of Transportation that you see down in the lower right-hand corner. And we are talking tonight about a potential for a traffic calming project on Bighorn Drive. Your councilman is with us. So, Mr. Eastlick, I appreciate you being here. Is there anything you'd like to say as we get started here?
No, I've been through this before. This should be fairly easy to follow along with. I know the people in that area are excited about this. At least Cody is, a friend of mine who's here tonight.
Well, great. Appreciate you being there and the support of council on the traffic calming program. It's a popular one. We'll talk a little bit about that.
It is.
The only other housekeeping thing I think is that we have a pretty small group here, so we typically would say about muting and trying to be muted if you're not talking, but however y'all want to do it, it's fine with us. But feel free to just chime in as we go through. If there's a question or a comment you want to address as we go, that would be great. Just a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to talk some about the overview of the traffic calming program and how Bighorn got inducted into it. Look at some of the data there. We'll talk about some of the tools that we have available to us, and then maybe most importantly, we'll show you a very early concept for what we think might be included in a traffic calming project on the street, and then talk to you some about the next steps. This little QR code that you see here might be helpful to you. We would love to have feedback. We would love to take it tonight, but also this is a shortcut to something called Engage Nashville. That is a way to submit feedback specific to projects that NDOT is looking at now. So it's a cool way to go in there, and there's a map. You can put push pins and leave all kind of comments and do different things there for specific to this project. So we encourage you to take advantage of that. As most people now, the more we do these projects, I think it gets more and more well known of what traffic calming is and maybe a little bit about how we go about our work. But we are a residential street program that's open to any resident of Davidson County. It's an application-based program. Someone applied for traffic calming on Bighorn at some point in the past. Sometimes we'll pull these old applications up, and a street will finally get selected after 3 years, and people forgot they even applied for it, I think. But that's how this works. We're always invited into a street, and that's the way we like to do it. We do focus on physical solutions to bring about slower speeds. Those are typically more and more things like that you drive over or that you drive around. We've just found that to be the most effective way to slow traffic down. And then we do focus on speed as opposed to traffic volumes or the amount of traffic. We don't try to push traffic to other streets. I think some people wish we could do more of that, but that's certainly not our objective. We try to keep traffic on the street where it is. We just try to get people to drive a little more responsibly in your neighborhood. So that's what this program is really all about. We recognize that we're not the only ones working in this space. We're great partners with Metro Nashville Police. A lot of people wish we could get a police cruiser out more often to sit and write tickets, and that would be a big help, and we don't disagree with that, but we also know that they have limited resources and just don't have a lot of time to sit and write tickets, and so we respect that. We do work closely with them. They're big supporters of the project, but that enforcement component is really important. We recognize that. As is education, we'll show you a tool or two that deal with that, just making sure people are aware of their speed and the impact of speed and some messaging that goes along with that. That's important too, but what we really focus on here is the engineering, putting things in the right of way, dealing with the infrastructure to try and bring about slower speeds. And this is one reason we do that, speeding is certainly a safety issue. It's also a quality of life issue, particularly when it's on your street in front of your house. But we find this to be pretty effective reminder that there are other people on the street besides those of us who are driving, and so our speed and how we operate our vehicles can have a really big impact, sometimes a life and death impact, unfortunately, on other people trying to use our streets. And so this is just a reminder of the impact of speed on pedestrians if there is unfortunately a pedestrian crash. We also like to remind people that if you're having speeding issues on your street, you're in good company. Right now, we are sitting on a backlog of about 600 streets where people have applied, just like you have on Bighorn, to have get some assistance with speed on their street. That's unfortunate, and it's also unfortunate we can only address those about 50 projects in a year, but it does give you some recognition for maybe where you stand in terms of that. You would have been in the top 25 of this last cohort of projects, and so you get both a congratulations and an I'm sorry, because that means you've got some issues, and NDOT recognizes that. So we hope we can help through this process. We'd like to remind you of Hub Nashville as well. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great clearinghouse. It's kind of like our application process, specifically the traffic calming, but Hub Nashville is much more general and has a lot more to it than just transportation. So you can do hub.nashville.gov or call 311, and it's just a great way to handle all things requested of local government there. A little bit more about the data that we use. So when an application came in for the street, as they have for all 600 of those streets, we start collecting data, and then we use that data to prioritize which projects we're going to go offer on streets. And Bighorn has received one of those. You don't have to worry about funding or recompeting at this point. We're here now to help determine what that project looks like for you. And so, but this is how we got here. About 70% of the scoring, the prioritization scoring, comes from traffic behavior, whether that's the amount of traffic on the street, the volume, how many cars a day you're traveling in, or how fast they're going. So that's probably pretty evident that we would use that data, and that's the bulk of our score. But the other 30% is really important too, and that gets back to those other types of users. So do you have sidewalks on the street? Is there transit service nearby? Or are there places that people may want to walk to or bicycle to, like parks or libraries or schools? All of that kind of information goes into our scoring process as well, as does a documented instance of a pedestrian crash. So if you have any or all of those things, that gets rolled into it, and that's how we make the decision, and that's how Bighorn got introduced into the program. Here's specifically the data that we collected. The 85th percentile speed, which is just a statistical way of how we look at speeds to kind of determine is there an issue or not, is 35 miles an hour. That means that 15% of the traffic is going faster than 85, maybe significantly faster, but we just kind of stop right there and look at all the streets relative to each other in terms of that 85th percentile speed. We also look at the volume, and so you're almost 1,700 vehicles a day. That sounds like a lot. That's a middle of the road type of a volume for the streets that we work on. We will do this type of traffic calming up to about 5,000 cars a day. So we're well within thresholds for doing a project like this one. What is a little bit unique on Bighorn is that it is a very wide street. I'm sure y'all are familiar with that. It's about 36 feet wide, maybe 37. We have not been on site yet, but that measurement's pretty close. We will refine that as we get a little deeper into the project. That makes a difference in terms of how we design a project. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. It's not a concern. It doesn't change our mind or anything like that. It's just we need to know that going in, like how much street width are we talking about. And then the project is just about a quarter of a mile long. Now this project is kind of interesting because the limits go from Cascade to Bighorn Court, which kind of looks like it's just sort of floating out there. The northern limit at Bighorn Court might make more sense because it's just before we go into Wilson County. We're not going to we're not going to traffic calm another county streets, so we won't go any further that way. And then it stops, I think, because it's at Cascade, which I'm sure you're aware has some speed cushions on it already. So that's the limits of our project that we are looking at. We like to show this map because it is a screenshot of an interactive map that's available to you on Metro's traffic calming website. And the little colors are important. You see Bighorn there in red with a great big arrow pointing to it. The red just means it's newly selected, and we're kind of working with the neighborhood like we are tonight. The blue line comes down Cascade. Not as important for you all. You obviously know there's speed cushions there, but sometimes we work with neighborhoods that are interested in where the closest traffic calming project might be, so they can go drive those and experience those if they're not familiar already. And then the purple lines that you see there, it looks like, I don't know, Winter Grace Farm, it looks like maybe, or Lexington Way. There's some streets nearby you. Those purple lines just indicate that there has been an application put in on the street, but it has not been selected yet. So if you're curious as to, if there's other streets that have been considered, those are the ones that we know about. A few of the tools that we use, again, most people in the county now have encountered our speed cushions. It's really become the bread and butter of this program. It's what we use way more than anything else, and for probably the simple reason that they work. They're pretty effective. It's a very high density rubber that is manufactured. It comes off a factory, and we like that because that means they're all the same dimensions. They all feel the same to the driver. They sit in the lanes just so we can configure them. We're very familiar with how they work, and we know how well they hold up. So we continue to use the same speed cushions from the same manufacturer. They're all 6 feet wide, which makes them to where they cannot really be straddled by a car, although some vehicles get pretty close. And so those are like ambulances, fire trucks, those emergency responders with bigger wheelbase vehicles. We don't want them to be hampered as much by a speed cushion. So that's why there's those gaps in between them so that emergency vehicles can get where they need to be. We have different ways we can lay those out. You see a couple of examples here. We got them 2 side by side. We can do 3 side by side. I think we've done up to maybe 5 side by side. We have some very wide streets in Nashville. Point of that being, we want to make sure that we get good coverage from one side of the street to the other, such that people cannot drive around, because we have learned the hard way. If we give people too much room even on the shoulder, we've had people leave the road and all kind of stuff. So in order to drive around them, so we work really hard to design a project that has to be driven over. That's how they become effective. Sometimes we will use the little delineators, those little white plastic sticks that you see there in that lower right-hand picture, to take up some of that room, just to make sure that people don't drive around. We try not to, but sometimes we have bike lanes and things like that we don't want to run the cushion all the way from one edge to the other for certain reasons. So something like that can be really helpful. We do have the ability to vary the length of the speed cushion in the direction of traffic. Our standard is 10.5 feet long, but we can shrink that down to 7 if we want something really aggressive, or we can lengthen it to 14 if we want something a little smoother, maybe more comfortable, but that also lets you drive faster. So that's why we have really kind of honed in on our default at 10.5 feet for most applications. Another tool that we have available is really a close cousin of the speed cushion. It's the speed table, made by the same manufacturer, just a little bit of a different configuration there. The obvious difference is we don't have those brakes, which means we don't get as small of an impact on our emergency response. For that reason, we don't use these nearly as often. and we try to be very careful about where we do deploy these. You'll see them sometimes in parks and things like that, where emergency response might not be as much of an issue. Otherwise, they were about the same. They're a little bit longer. They're certainly wider, but they work about the same way. We do have some before and after data on speed cushions and their impact, but not a whole lot. And I'm always a little, I don't talk too much about it because every street is different and every street is starting from a different speed. And so, but we are seeing consistently slower speeds in that, an average of 9 to 12 miles an hour, something like that, in a before versus after condition. Another tool that we have available that doesn't involve putting something in the road is the radar feedback sign. You'll see these fairly frequently in neighborhoods. This gets to that education component where, if we can remind drivers, make them aware of how fast they're driving and remind them that, we're hoping for slower speeds, it can be helpful. Some neighborhoods, these have gone in and the residents absolutely swear by them and say it's the greatest thing. Others say it worked pretty well at first, but seems to have lost some of its effectiveness. I can kind of understand both of those perceptions. We don't have as much before and after data on these, especially in the long term, and I think that's more of the concern is, if you drive past this every day for a long period of time, does it still have that effectiveness as it might have in the beginning? So, but it can be a helpful tool, particularly when we can't use speed cushions. Was there a question there? Sorry, I heard something. Another tool is that we can do is sometimes if we can visually narrow a street, do that by using something as basic as pavement markings. We will do that. Some streets have no markings whatsoever. Others have a full complement of edge lines and center lines. So we will introduce those sometimes. Or if there's marking out there that's just totally faded, we can use this as a way to get our markings refreshed. Also, out there can be helpful. Some specific examples, a little more involved examples in more urban areas usually are bulb outs where we have big, wide, sweeping radiuses, and we're trying to bring about slower speeds turning onto and off of a street. These can be helpful. They're also great for pedestrians in terms of shortening the crossing distance of the street. Chicanes is another more of an urban treatment. It's been used on a couple of streets in Nashville, not very many, but it introduces an artificial meandering of traffic. It works okay if there's parking like you see here, something that, physically makes you kind of meander out of the way there. So that's something we don't use very often, but we can. And then traffic circles is another one. And this is one that it kind of comes and goes. I think NDOT would like to see a few more of these currently, but boy, conditions have to be pretty right because this takes a lot of pavement. It takes a pretty big intersection for this traffic circle to work well. And we also have to be very careful about larger vehicles. School buses are one of the main ones that we want to be sure, we can turn a big vehicle like that around these or make sure they can navigate the intersection. But they can be effective, particularly if we're looking at traffic calming on two different streets. So that's the tools that we have available. And so this brings us to what we have very tentatively planned for this section of your street, again, from Cascade Drive to Bighorn Court. And what you're looking at here is Cascade coming down from on the left-hand side of your screen where that blue circle is, and then the cul-de-sac there, just at the other end at Bighorn Court. For the whole length of that project, what we are suggesting might be a good project would be a set of 3 speed cushions and also a traffic circle planned for the intersection of Cascade and Bighorn. The reason, and that's different. We don't recommend those very often, but I think it may be a good fit here because you already have traffic calming on Cascade. Bighorn is slated to get traffic calming, and that's an awful lot of pavement out there. Those are both very wide streets. And so I think, we could certainly design something to fit that in and see that works. But we're open to, we want to hear from you. If you don't like the idea, no problem at all. But we think, that might be one of a case where something like that could work. The location of the speed cushions then would take care of the speed along Bighorn, at least this section of Bighorn. And the way we come up with 3 is we look at the whole length of this project from one end to the other is about a little over 1,200 feet. And we'll take that and we'll divide that by our spacing that we would like to see. Most cases, we're looking at something between about a 400 and a 600 foot spacing, sometimes a little shorter than that, occasionally a little longer. If you're really in a more of a rural or very low density suburban area, but typically we're in that, around that 500 foot spacing. That's close enough together that most people won't clear one set of speed cushions and step on the gas to get to the other one, but it's far enough apart to where it just doesn't feel totally obnoxious to you who have to drive on this every day or push traffic to some other street, which is not our objective. So that's what we have to show in terms of a potential project, but open to feedback on your thoughts on that, or if you just, where you're seeing the issues and things that you think we should know about as we move the project forward.
Can anybody talk at any time?
Please do. The floor is yours.
Yes, sir. We see it every day, all the heavy traffic, all the speeding. The problem is that if you don't put in full length speed cushions, we have motorcycles running 70, 80, 90 miles an hour at various times during the day and evening. And semis. We have actual semis that live in the neighborhood. So if you don't put full length cushions, the ones that you have on Cascade, they work great for vehicles. Motorcycles can still fly up and down. And of course, Bighorn catches a lot of traffic coming from the lake area, Hickory Lake subdivisions, because it's a shortcut rather than Andrew Jackson stuff. But literally, if we don't get full length speed cushions, then the motorcycles are going to continue to fly. And one of our closest neighbors within a few houses of us flies on a motorcycle and flies in a Corvette every day, just like clockwork.
Yeah, we hear that often. That's great feedback. There have been a few cases where, if we look and maybe we talk to the fire department or whoever, and they're like, yeah, it's rare we're responding. It's not a made emergency response route. Maybe we can do something like that. So that's good feedback. We'll check into that. We do hear the motorcycle issue a lot, and you're right. They will not be impacted by the speed cushions. I would say nothing is foolproof. Even when these go in, there will be knuckleheads that will drive probably way too fast over them still. So nothing catches 100%, but most people say they do a pretty good job. When you say it's a shortcut to the lake, I just wanted to ask. I assume that means boats on trailers. Not that really affects things one way or the other, but we might want to consider that. Is that something that you see a lot of?
No, sir. Very little,
Okay.
very little boat traffic, pulling boats towards the lake, very little that. But the thing is, the motorcycles, they just fly. And it's a every single day event. Going to and from work and people that live in the neighborhood.
And I know the traffic calming can't catch everything. It did change Cascade dramatically. The traffic there To me, I don't know that many people actually go over 20 miles an hour between the traffic tables. So it's, where earlier it said it slowed them down 12 miles an hour. At least on Cascade, it seems to be a whole lot more than just 12 miles an hour. There are a lot of vehicles coming and going to the lake. He's right. There are subdivisions back there, and Saundersville Road goes pretty far back. Instead of going all the way to the end and catching Lebanon Road at the end of Andrew Jackson, a lot of people are cutting down either Bighorn or Cascade. And now that Cascade's got traffic calming, I'm sure Bighorn's gone up. To me, the biggest question isn't the traffic tables and being able to do that as far as whether they're complete or have spaces. It's the traffic circle at the bottom. This is the first traffic circle proposed in any of the traffic calming that I've dealt with. I really need to go look at it and think about it in the context of having one there. It certainly would. It would be a disruption. I mean, it would definitely make it harder for anybody to go fast in that area. What size circle do you know or believe they would use in that space?
What we would do is we would take measurements from the outside diameter of that. Before we start sketching those in. I guess I don't know, a countermeasure or a tool that would take a lot more design work than just the speed cushion.
Yeah.
So we won't need a full survey. It's not going to affect drainage. It's not going to get into any big uh, impactful type reconstruction of the street.
Yeah.
But we do need to take a little more detailed measurements to figure out exactly, what size circle. It's got to be big enough so that you have to slow down to go around it, but it can't be so big, like I mentioned, that you prevent school buses and stuff like that from getting through there reasonably. So
I would
they
probably
can be
like
tricky.
to see a plan with 4 tables instead of the one with the traffic circle. Maybe you bump up the ones every bit, just a few feet, shorten the distance between it, and make 4 of the tables instead of the traffic circle at the bottom, just to see what the two side by side may look like. I do feel like the traffic circle is an aggressive move for that space down there. So I will have to evaluate that and think about what we may be giving up. To me, I talk about Cascade when I do these um, traffic calming meetings, mainly because the difference in speed was so stark. Um, it's difficult to get down Cascade at times just because some people don't go any faster than maybe 5 or 10 miles an hour between them. So I mean, people were going too fast for sure. But now it may take twice to 3 times as long to get down the road because someone isn't going, even 15 miles an hour in between the tables. So I like the fact that this is just a portion of the road. Of course, if we could get Wilson County on board, that would be great. But looking at maybe 4 tables instead of the traffic circle may be another option out there that may make sense based on the pros and cons of them all.
Yeah, right, we agree with that. The traffic circle, once they get through the traffic circle going up Bighorn back towards the lake, they're going to fly then. The traffic circle is only going to slow them down for 10 seconds driving around it at the bottom of the Cascade. Once they get past that going home, so to speak, they're going to fly again.
Well, they're going to run into the speed table just right up the road, and I mean, whether there's a traffic circle there or a speed table there, one way or the other, they're going to, get past it and go to the next one. Um, I
Right,
don't know, but I don't know. To me, right now, I'm trying to figure out what the cost and benefit of a traffic circle versus a proposed another speed cushion. I think the traffic circle will make it more difficult for the traffic in general, not just the people, to keep people from speeding. And I don't know that it would be good for the neighborhood in that area. It might be. I'm going to have to go back and look at it and think about it, and maybe get somebody from NDOT out to look at it with me, to understand better. But instead, to at least put a proposal together that has 4 cushions instead of 3 plus the traffic circle.
I would definitely go with that. The cushions or the tables, that's the perfect result, especially if you can run them full length. Because like I said, we have motorcycles that are close neighbors, and they literally 70, 80 miles an hour is nothing. Now, if we could ever get a random unmarked Metro car writing tickets and just do it randomly, do it one day, say at 10 in the morning or 9 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and then vary it by an hour or so every other day randomly, people getting tickets and taking money out of their pocket, that's really going to slow it down. Now,
And I'm working on
I know
trying to
Metro's
get more,
strapped.
yeah, getting better enforcement. And it's been something I've been
Yes,
working
sir.
on for over a year. So it's not that easy, but I've been working with the last 3 captains in the traffic division, and again, even with the latest one, he and I are going back and forth to try to see where we can work on in the neighborhood. Certainly, Wilson County does a good job. I know they're up on Matterhorn all the time. I see them up there. They, if we can get some help there, especially at the top, they would be probably easier to get to run radar in that area than it would MNPD. But overall, I think this plan, whether it's 4 tables or 3 and a traffic circle, will make that area at least a breakup zone for where they can't speed. Um, and if they do, I mean, I guess, it would be down to motorcycles, and it would catch more of the people traveling fast down there than not. Cody, anything from you?
Yeah. Hey, Jeff.
Uh,
So we're excited about this as it sounds like our fellow neighbor is as well because it's needed. The amount of cars that we've seen, including ours, when we were getting driveway work done, get smashed on this road from people just flying up and down it at night, um, is quite crazy. And my husband has lived here for 33 years. This is his childhood home, and so it's gotten definitely worse over time. It's always been an issue, but he's even said, just the influx of people, and it's gotten worse
yeah.
over the years. I think my one kind of concern I had about the traffic circle is we don't have sidewalks, and we have quite a bit of people now that use the road for walking, running, with their kids, their dogs and stuff, biking. Is that if there is a traffic circle, like for them, is that going to be easy for them to continue walking when there's a circle without sidewalks with people trying to, divert the traffic circle and stuff as well? So that was kind of my like initial thought on the traffic circle. I don't hate the traffic circle. I do think it'll make a statement, like kind of like coming into the road,
Yeah.
but I do and I think it's definitely going to uproar some people as far as all of these will. You'll always have people unhappy, but the safety I think is the number one priority. But again, like we don't have sidewalks, so what will that traffic circle look like while people are still trying to walk and people, cars going around and stuff as well. So that's just kind of my input for that.
I think the traffic circle is going to slow people down in that intersection.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I do think when you said make a statement, I think that's dead on. With it being in that area right there, it says both of these ways we're trying to slow you down. So just understand from this point forward, you're going to run into some stuff, and
Yeah.
it may not be. I mean, it may be more difficult to turn left. I mean, shoot, I don't know. I really need to go look at it and think about it, in that way. So if I'm coming up from Lebanon Road, I've got to go around and then curve around the outside of that traffic circle. I can't just make a left.
Yeah,
I've got to go, past
right.
where I would generally go and then go around. And
There is some debate on that, and that's part of the reason why these kind of come in fits and starts. Yes, what you said is true. You should, like you see in the little sign there, if you can see that, you should, always turn right and go around the traffic circle to make a left turn. However, what we have found that some vehicles can't do that. If I'm in a school bus, for instance, they will sometimes just find that they just have to turn left in front of it. And typically these are on low volume streets and it's not a big deal and you can do that and it works okay. Um, but that is something to consider, and we would try to design it in such a way as to minimize that. But there are often bigger vehicles like that have a harder time navigating, and then some people just find it simpler to turn left in front of it, so that's what they do.
yeah, I
And
see
so
that too.
it
And
becomes an issue.
I think that would probably be a lingering issue. Why,
Probably.
why did the traffic calming stop at that intersection? Why did it not go forward, or can it go forward?
Like down toward Lebanon Road.
Yeah.
Um, the
And I was just
simple answer.
thinking in front of it, like, one more house down.
Yes. The simple answer is because that's what the application said. And I asked the same question of NDOT. I said, is this our best limit? And I think because Cascade had it and all, that was the rationale behind it. But my thought was much like Cody's there, which was really a good observation. I thought it served more of a gateway. If this is the end of our project at Cascade, if we were to put something like this to serve both Cascade and Bighorn as kind of a gateway of traffic calming into the neighborhood, I thought that might be helpful. As well as on Cascade, if you're coming south, you cleared your last speed cushion. I don't know if people pick speed back up again and then kind of round that corner back out to Lebanon Road too fast or not, but this would give one more opportunity to make sure that they turn on the Bighorn slowly, going around the circle there. So that was the rationale. But getting back to, could four cushions do the job? Absolutely, I think they could, and you probably wouldn't see that much of a difference on how Bighorn operates. I think you'll probably actually see more difference for Cascade than Bighorn. So if you went with four, I think you're going to see a pretty similar.
Yeah, and I
Pattern.
really, one house down, um, Bighorn across the Cascade intersection.
Yeah.
Yes, right there where your mouse is, somewhere right
Yep.
around in there,
Yep.
to tie it all together. So at that point, this one down there where the pointer is the beginning of both of them, in effect.
I follow you. Yeah.
Cascade and the Bighorn, and it goes up as far as we can, right there at the court. So to me, I think that would be a really good way to do it. I'm not opposed to looking at the circle. I do, I think people would agree that drivers tend to make that left early or tight, right there getting onto Cascade. So a table would help with that in theory, but it would also make them make that cut, for the ones that are going to do it. We know not everyone is going to pay attention and abide by what we're trying to make happen here. Just like we're talking about with motorcycles going through the gaps, um, people may make that early cut. So I would really like to look at tables that tied together the tables on Cascade and the tables on Bighorn, and starting right there, kind of where we had the pointer, just down from the intersection at Cascade.
Mhm. Okay.
And
Okay.
to elaborate a little bit on the gentleman talking about the lake, not only are there a lot of subdivisions and a lot of building that goes on Saundersville Road going all the way out there towards Cedar Creek, but also we get an extraordinary number of motorcycles that turn this into some type of uh, course, some kind of speed course. And so I understand. I live off Cascade, off of Woodside, right on the other side of Cascade. So I hear it too. It happens all the time, and we've got some pretty big curves, and I think the motorcycles, at least that speed type of them, I really enjoy that risk, but
And
it's
and
real.
just to touch on the motorcycle thing, um, there is like a guy that works on motorcycles up the road, and I think he's very reputable. And not to say anything bad toward him, but he has a lot of customers. I think that maybe come see him, so that gives us an influx on the motorcycles coming up through here. So nothing like he's doing a job, and I'm perfectly fine for that working and stuff. I'm just saying that I think that also adds to it. Yeah, the motorcycles are an issue on the road, and I think that contributes to it a little bit, but
Okay.
obviously that is nothing nothing we can fix, and would not want to mess with him as far as his income. But, that's just kind of a reason we get an influx as well.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of testing and stuff gets done on them up and
Yeah.
down the roads to see how they're shifting and whatnot. But, and I'm not even sure if he's in Davidson County. I'm
I
not
was
sure if
going
it's,
to
I think
say, I
his
think he's in Wilson.
I think he is. And so coming this way, he knows that there's not going to be a cop sitting
No,
here more than likely. Whereas if you get up toward Matterhorn, I would say 5 times out of 10, there's
here,
a cruiser sitting there sometimes, and I'm thankful for it, because you'll
if
see people,
yes, I wave at
you
him
know,
all the time. I
yeah,
pulled over and told him I'm a council person for Nashville. I would love to have this happen.
yeah. So, so I also think they come this way toward because they know. So,
Yeah. Well, do you think this would serve the neighborhood well, especially if we looked at 4 that tied in down there just past Cascade?
oh, absolutely. I think, just from Cascade, even in my speaking, and I'm not even a speeder, I'm like, ugh, I don't really want to go down Cascade, or I don't want to, and I don't even speed. I'll be quite honest, I'm the one that put the application in and got neighbors together to, you know, get this done. And I just, I worry about the people walking and our little kids, and a lot of people have animals that sometimes get out loose, and, you know,
Well, if
even the
you go
feral
down
cats need
Cascade,
to
it
be.
made a big
It
difference.
did. It did. So no, I think whatever decisions are made as far as what we're going to get, every bit will help, and we're happy for it. So
Okay.
All right, that sounds good. Well, let me go through kind of the next steps and what you can expect from us. So this is a flow chart just showing you where we go. We're in this red circle now, the neighborhood meeting. What we will do is we'll go back a little bit to the drawing board here and finish fleshing out a concept. And it sounds like what we want to do is go ahead and remove the circle and replace that with that 4th cushion just on the south side of Cascade. We'll go ahead and work on that, finish that design. Now, at that point, we're happy to come back to you and show you that. But if you want to take our word for it, and that's a pretty minor change for us, we don't have to do a second meeting. That's totally up to y'all. We can work with you on that, however you want to do it. A lot of neighborhoods, if we're close on the plan, they say, yeah, let's move it forward. Let's just save the time and not do another meeting. That's fine. But happy to come back either way. In any event, whatever we do with that, we go to the next step is the ballot process. I'll talk a little bit more about that. The ballot process is required for all of our meetings. And then if that does pass, then we would move that into the construction queue. All that to say, don't be expecting that, by school starting time, you're going to have speed cushions out here. It doesn't go that fast. And so we're probably, if everything goes smoothly and we streamline as much as possible, we're still probably close to a year before anything would be implemented. NDOT's working really hard and has made some great steps. I think they have a second contractor in, but it's just a big backlog of these projects to be installed. So we like to kind of set that expectation with you. On the ballot process, the way that happens is we would send you a card. Hopefully you received a card for this meeting. We'd send something similar to you for the ballot. And there's just a little QR code that you vote online and basically just say, yes, you're for it, or no, you're not. And you can also call that in if you want to do it by phone. And we
That'd be
keep that
great.
open. Yeah, we keep that open for 6 weeks. And at the end of 6 weeks, we just tally all of those. And if 2/3 of the people who voted are in favor of it, we'll move the project forward. And so that's the way that works. The people who get to vote are people who own property that abut the right of way of Bighorn Drive in this segment. And so from Cascade to Bighorn. Now, if we do move it to the other side of Cascade, we'll extend that, those rights to those people who would be impacted a little on the south of Cascade. But no businesses, no vacant properties. I think everything here is residential. I don't know if you have any of those others. It does look like there's at least one property that has 2 owners on a single property. Those people both get to vote. If there's anybody that owns more than one piece of property, they only get to vote one time. So there's a few little intricacies to it, but for the most part, it's anybody who owns the property in between. I do point that out that it is owners. We don't send these to the property itself. So even if you have a very long-term renter there, that's just kind of the decision that's been made in terms of a policy. But those cards will go to the owner of the property and not necessarily the resident. Any questions with the ballot process?
No, sir, not with us.
Okay. Well, we're down to kind of following up here. There's some contact information, NDOT, and then I'm Jeff. I'm the one in green there. Feel free to reach out to either or both of us. And then the other way to do it is it's a brand new tool. This is the first time we've introduced these for this cohort of projects. That QR code there on the right goes to something called Engage Nashville, or you can just type engage.Nashville.gov, and it is a place where all of the specific websites for these traffic calming projects is housed. And so you'll search down through there, you'll find Bighorn Drive. You've already got a project page there if you haven't seen it yet, and you can pull that up. And that's a great way to leave us information. There's a map, you can put little push pins and tell us the issues and all that stuff. I've heard you tonight. You don't necessarily have to go back in and regurgitate all that to us, but we sure do like having that written feedback as well. So I always encourage you to do that if you're so inclined. The only other thing I have to show you, I think you probably have it, is the Traffic Calming website. That map is there that I showed you. Some of our toolbox materials are there. You can look back and you can find the voting experience of every neighborhood that we have balloted, whether they passed or failed, and by how much. So if you're interested in all things traffic calming, it's there for you. But I think we got very good direction from you. Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for all of you giving us that. I think we've got a good plan forward to modify that design, flesh it out a little bit more, do our own site measurements, and then and I didn't mention before we go to a vote, we will post the finished set of plans online, so you'll have the opportunity to download those, look at them, and know exactly what we're proposing and where we're proposing the speed cushions and so forth.
And the other ones that I've done that had a change, we did not have the second meeting.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
Unless they want to hear the 2 people, which really is a small number. I think if you got my socials or get my newsletter, you see that I keep kind of everybody up to speed there. And then if y'all want to reach out to me at jeff.eastlick@Nashville.gov, I will send you what Jeff and I come back up with. And then Jeff, you and I can get back together on this after some changes are made to make sure we're on the same page. And then I can reach out to them, or at least put that online. That way it's out there like I've done with the other ones, and we can forego that second one and costing that extra time. If y'all are okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. All right. I
Sounds
appreciate
great.
everybody
Thanks,
being here.
sir.
I'm glad we got this thing moving. He said and showed that time frame. I will say they have been running a little ahead on some of these recently.
Good.
I'm waiting on Hadley to find out if that trend continues. Right now, I'm not sure where that one is, but most of them have run a little ahead of what they've scheduled. So we'll just keep on going and figure it out. But this one's got a small number of people that are voting. I don't know if everybody voted. Would they close the voting, or if it's still got to stay open for 6 weeks? But either way, foregoing that second meeting, we'll move this forward, and I'll stay with Jeff on the layout. We'll go from there.
Sounds good. Thank you all for your
Good.
time tonight and for your interest in the project. We appreciate it very much. Have a good rest of
Thank
your
you
evening.
much. You too. Bye-bye.